Twabble, Sawabona. Alright, pen swipers. Oh. Sorry, somebody swipe my pen. Sawabona, yeah. Thank you, Tiffany. Pencil and eraser. Kids. Josh had it yesterday. I remember. All right, beautiful people. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. It is March the 30th, 2021, Tuesday, day 115 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 784. Today, we are starting in 1 Samuel chapter 28. I forget how many chapters in Samuel, so I need to check real quick. Thank you, Shayla. Thank you. Alright, y'all. So, good morning, Levon, Nikki. That's Wobble. Today, y'all, is my 42nd year of being alive on this earth today, just in case you were wondering. I had a bunch of birthdays, but I know some people wonder about the age. I know some people have an issue with telling people how old they are. I don't. I'm 42 years old today, so blessed be the most holy for another day upon this earth. Made it to 42 years old. Not that I had any kind of doubts that I wouldn't. I just don't think that way. But blessed be the most holy, because he is the one who gives life and gives death. Why is it? Hold on. Why is it not popping up? Oh no. Where's it? Okay. That's what I thought. I'm typing it in, but it was saying like there was no book here. I'm sorry, y'all. No, it is. What is wrong with this thing? Why is it not pulling it up? Oh, okay. It's weird. I don't know. Maybe it's Bible Gateway glitching in there or something. Okay. Maybe we'll just read these last 4. It's 31 chapters in 1 Samuel. No, I'll leave it at the 3. And we'll add that one because we're going into 2 Samuel. We'll add 31 until tomorrow. We're going 2 and 3. Alright, so 1 Samuel 28. Then we'll pick up with the legends of the Jews. On page 453. Okay. Tana, morning. Just a baby still. The one said I'm still a baby. I know what you mean. No offense is taken. Alright, y'all. Let me pull this up here. I'll get my shimmer going. Alright, y'all. The shimmer is found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 3. Hear, therefore, O Israel, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily, as Yahuwah, the God of our fathers, has promised us, in a land that flows with milk and honey. Hear, O Israel, Yahuwah, our God, he is one God, and you shall love Yahuwah your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your might. And these words which I command you this day shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children. And you shall talk of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them upon the posts of your house and on your gates. And Yahuwah commanded us to do all these statutes, to fear Yahuwah our God for our good always. that he might preserve us alive as it is at this day. And it shall be our righteousness if we observe to do all these commandments before Yahuwah our God as he has commanded us. Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Aliyah. Shalom, shalom. Okay, y'all. Fix my screen right here. Okay. 1 Samuel chapter 28. Moving this slow. Okay, there we go. Okay, 1 Samuel chapter 28. About that time, the Philistines mustered their armies for another war with Israel. King Achish told David, "You and your men will be expected to join me in battle." "Very well," David agreed. "Now you will see for yourself what we can do." Then Achish told David, "I will make you my personal bodyguard for life." Meanwhile, Samuel had died, and all Israel had mourned for him. He was buried in Ramah in his hometown, and Saul had banned the land of Israel, Saul had banned from the land of Israel all mediums and those who consult the spirits of the dead. The Philistines set up their camp at Shunem, and Saul gathered all the army of Israel and camped at Gilboa. When Saul saw the vast Philistine army, he became frantic with fear. He asked Yahuwah what he should do, but Yahuwah refused to answer him, either by dreams or by sacred lots or by the prophets. Saul then said to his advisors, "Find a woman who is a medium so I can go and ask her what to do." His advisors replied, "There is a medium at Endor." So Saul disguised himself by wearing ordinary clothing instead of his royal robes. Then he went to the woman's home at night, accompanied by 2 of his men. "I have to talk to a man who has died," he said. "Will you call up his spirit for me?" "Are you trying to get me killed?" the woman demanded. "You know that Saul has outlawed all mediums and all who consult the spirits of the dead. Why are you setting a trap for me?" But Saul took an oath in the name of Yahuwah and promised, "As surely as Yahuwah lives, nothing bad will happen to you for doing this." Finally, the woman said, "Well, whose spirit do you want me to call up?" "Call up Samuel," Saul replied. When the woman saw Samuel, she screamed, "You've deceived me. You are Saul." "Don't be afraid," the king told her. "What do you see?" "I see a God coming up out of the earth," she said. "What does he look like?" Saul asked. "He is an old man wrapped in a robe," she replied. Saul realized it was Samuel, and he fell to the ground before him. Now, y'all remember, right? Remember when we got to this part? Let me fix this. In the Legends of the Jews, when we got to this part right here, there was the one, if you missed it, you can go back to the previous videos called The Witch of Endor. That was the title for today. But it was there that we got more detail on this right here. What happened was, remember how it explained that she knew it wasn't one of the demonic entities that she had conjured up, but it was truly King Saul. Now, how did she know? Because when a medium conjures up a spirit, they come up, and you've probably seen this in some movies too. When the spirit comes up, they see them rise, and they're upside down, right? And so they knew that it was truly, matter of fact, they knew 2 things. When the spirit rose and it was upright, they knew 2 things. First of all, this is not a demon. This is truly someone who is from heaven, someone Yahuwah has sent personally, right? That it's someone real. You done called up a real spirit, not a demon or whatever, or a familiar spirit, because they would have come up upside down. But somebody that comes up upright is someone who is holy, and somebody that the Most Holy has authorized. And then you will also know that there was a king present, right? Saul disguised himself, and thereby when she saw that, she immediately knew, you're the king, right? So a couple things was going on here, and that's what that previous video when we did that's called The Witch of Endor. If you missed it, go back and watch it, because it's way more detail in there. So that's what happened. That's why she said, when the woman saw Samuel, she screamed, "You deceived me. You are Saul." "Don't be afraid," the king told her. "What do you see?" "I see a God coming up out of the earth," she said. "What does he look like?" Saul asked. "He is an old man wrapped in a robe," she replied. Saul realized it was Samuel, and he fell to the ground before him. Why have you disturbed me by calling me back? Samuel asked Saul. Also, another thing, the witch or the medium or the spiritist who was calling up the spirit, they could see the spirit coming up, but the person who asked them to call them up could not see. But the person who asked them to call up could hear, but the person who called them up could not hear, right? So the witch could see, but she could not hear. Saul could hear, but he could not see, right? Okay. That's why he asked him, what does he look like? And then when it replied, Samuel specifically spoke to Saul. So the witch could not hear what Samuel was saying to Saul. She could only see his figure standing upright, giving him that side eye. He is an old man wrapped in a robe, she replied. Saul realized it was Samuel, and he fell to the ground before him. Why have you disturbed me by calling me back? Samuel asked Saul. Because I'm in deep trouble, Saul replied. The Philistines are at war with me, and Yahuwah has left me and won't reply by prophets or dreams. So I have called for you to tell me what to do. But Samuel replied, why ask me, since Yahuwah has left you and become your enemy? Yahuwah has done just what he said he would. He has torn the kingdom from you and given it to your rival David. Yahuwah has done this to you today because you refused to carry out his fierce anger against the Amalekites. What's more, Yahuwah will hand you and the army of Israel over to the Philistines tomorrow, and you and your sons will be here with me. Yahuwah will bring down the entire army of Israel in defeat. Saul fell full length to the ground, paralyzed with fright because of Samuel's words. He was also faint with hunger, for he had eaten nothing all day and all night. When the woman saw how distraught he was, she said, Sir, I obeyed your command at the risk of my life. Now do what I say and let me give you a little something to eat so you can regain your strength for the trip back. But Saul refused to eat anything. Then his advisors joined the woman in urging him to eat. So finally he yielded and got up from the ground and sat on the couch. The woman had been fattening a calf, so she hurried out and killed it. She took some flour, kneaded it into dough, and baked unleavened bread. She brought the meal to Saul and his advisors, and they ate it. Then they went out into the night. So we also know that this was a feast of unleavened bread. Why? Because she was baking unleavened bread. Most people don't just, I want unleavened bread today. No, people want yeast and stuff. She baked unleavened bread because they were in the feast, like we are today. This is what? Day 3 of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So, 1 Samuel chapter 29. The entire Philistine army now mobilized at Apex, and the Israelites camped at the spring in Jezreel. As the Philistine rulers were leading out their troops in groups of hundreds and thousands, David and his men marched at the rear with King Achish. But the Philistine commanders demanded, what are these Hebrews doing here? And Achish told him, this is David, the servant of King Saul of Israel. He's been with me for years, and I've never found a single fault in him from the day he arrived until today. But the Philistine commanders were angry. Send him back to the town you've given him, they demanded. He can't go into battle with us. What if he turns against us in battle and becomes our adversary? Is there any better way for him to reconcile himself with his master than by handing our heads over to him? Isn't this the same David about whom the women... There's a bird sitting here on my lap. I thought it was something there just staring at me. There's a bird that's sitting right here just staring at me. Came and sat on my window ledge. Hey, bird. It is really just sitting there staring at me. Okay. But the Philistine commanders were angry. Send him back to the town you've given him, they demanded. He can't go into battle with us. What if he turns against us in battle and becomes our adversary? Is there any better way for him to reconcile himself with his master than by handing our heads over to him? Isn't this the same David about whom the women of Israel sing in their dances? Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s. So Achish finally summoned David and said to him, I swear by Yahuwah that you have been a trustworthy ally. I think you should go with me into battle, for I've never found a single flaw in you from the day you arrived until today. but the other Philistine rulers won't hear of it. Please don't upset them, but go back quietly. What have I done to deserve this treatment? David demanded. What have you ever found in your servant that I can't go and fight the enemies of my lord the king? But Achish insisted, as far as I am concerned, you are as perfect as an angel of Yahuwah. But the Philistine commanders are afraid to have you with them in battle. Now get up early in the morning and leave with your men as soon as it gets light. So David and his men headed back into the land of the Philistines while the Philistine army went on to Jezreel. All right, our last chapter for today, 1 Samuel chapter 30. 3 days later, when David and his men arrived at their home in Ziklag, they found the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and Ziklag. They had crushed Ziklag and burned it to the ground. They had carried off the women and the children and everyone else, but without killing anyone. When David and his men saw the ruins and realized what had happened to their families, they wept until they could weep no more. David's two wives, Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel, were among those captured. David was now in great danger because all his men were very bitter about losing their sons and daughters, and they began to talk of stoning him. But David found strength in Yahuwah his God. And then he said to Abiathar, the priest, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought it. Then David asked Yahuwah, should I chase after this band of raiders? Will I catch them? And Yahuwah told him, yes, go after them. You will surely recover everything that was taken from you. So David and his 600 men set out, and they came to the brook Besor. But 200 of the men were too exhausted to cross the brook. So David continued the pursuit with 400 men. Along the way, they found an Egyptian man in a field and brought him to David. They gave him some bread to eat and water to drink. They also gave him part of a fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins, for he hadn't had anything to eat or drink for 3 days and nights. Before long, his strength returned. To whom do you belong, and where do you come from? David asked him. I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite, he replied. My master abandoned me 3 days ago because I was sick. We were on our way back from raiding the Kerethites in the Negev, the territory of Judah, and the land of Caleb, and we had just burned Ziklag. Oh, they're looking for you. Will you lead me to this band of raiders? David asked. The young man replied, if you take an oath in Yahuwah's name that you will not kill me or give me back to my master, then I will guide you to them. So he led David to them, and they found the Amalekites spread out across the fields, eating and drinking and dancing with joy because of the vast amount of plunder they had taken from the Philistines in the land of Judah. David and his men rushed in among them and slaughtered them throughout that night and the entire next day until evening. None of the Amalekites escaped except 400 young men who fled on camels. David got back everything the Amalekites had taken, and he rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, small or great, son or daughter, nor anything else had been taken. David brought back everything. He also recovered all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock. This plunder belongs to David, they said. Then David returned to the brook Besor and met up with the 200 men who had been left behind because they were too exhausted to go with him. They went out to meet David and his men, and David greeted them joyfully. But some evil troublemakers among David's men said, they didn't go with us, so they can't have any of the plunder we recovered. Give them their wives and their children and tell them to be gone. Y'all remember Set It Off? When TT didn't go with them to rob the bank, and they got back, Vivica Fox was like, she don't get nothing because she ain't do nothing. I need that money, TT. Remember that part? I just thought about that. They acting the same way. They didn't go with us, so they can't have any of the plunder we recovered. They ain't go with us to help us rob the bank. They don't get nothing. Just give them their wives and their children and tell them to be gone. But David said, no, my brothers. Don't be selfish with what Yahuwah has given you. He kept us safe and helped us defeat the band of raiders that attacked us. Who will listen when you talk like this? We share and share alike, those who go to battle and those who guard the equipment. From then on, David made this a decree and a regulation for Israel, and it is still followed today. Like, somebody got to watch this stuff, because if you don't, somebody else will come in and destroy what you left. So those who go into war and those who stay behind and guard, they should equally be able to join in with the fruits of the labor, the ones actually out there on the field. Matter of fact, you see that today, right? No matter where you go, you see that. Well, I would hope you would see that principle in place, even in the military, right? You have different parts of the military. You got different branches. You got some that are actually ground forces, like Marines and Army. But even some of the ground forces, Army and Marines, they got cooks. They got medical assistants. They got the dentists. They got all the occupations that the civilian world has in order to support the ground troops. It's everywhere, and they all share in the plunder. All of them get paid alike, right? It doesn't matter it does matter what rank you are, because that determines your pay rate. But because maybe you're an officer, and you're officer and you're a cook, and you're an officer in your ground forces, your pay rate is still the same, but there is a slight difference. Depending on if you're in a hazardous area, your pay may be a little bit more because you're risking more. You're literally risking life and limb. While this officer is in the safety and protection behind a fortress cooking meals for everybody, so you get a little bit of hazardous pay and other, stipends and stuff, because you're literally risking life and limb. So the pay does increase just a little bit, and that's fair, right? But you can't argue with them because they got paid more because they were out there. But still, according to the base pay rate, everybody gets paid alike, right? Okay, y'all get it. Let's see. When he arrived at Ziklag, David sent part of the plunder to the elders of Judah, who were his friends. "Here's a present from you, taken from Yahuwah's enemies," he said. The gifts were sent to the people of the following towns David had visited: Bethel, Ramoth, Negev, Jatir, Erah, Sipmoth, Eshtemoa, Rechal, the towns of the Jerahmeelites, the towns of the Kenites, Hormah, Bor Ashan, Athak, Hebron, and all the other places David and his men had visited. That was really short. Okay, you know what? What the heck? This is only a couple verses. It's 11. I'm going to go ahead and read this last chapter of 1 Samuel. All right. 1 Samuel chapter 31. And we'll just start in 2 Samuel 1 tomorrow. Now the Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before them. Many were slaughtered on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. The Philistines closed in on Saul and his sons, and they killed 3 of his sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. The fighting grew very fierce around Saul, and the Philistine archers caught up with him and wounded him severely. Saul groaned to his armor-bearer, "Take your sword and kill me before these pagan Philistines come to run through me and taunt and torture me." But his armor-bearer was afraid and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When his armor-bearer realized that Saul was dead, he fell on his own sword and died beside the king. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor-bearer, and all his troops all died together that same day. When the Israelites on the other side of the Jezreel Valley and beyond the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their towns and fled. So the Philistines moved in and occupied their towns. The next day, when the Philistines went out to strip the dead, they found the bodies of Saul and his 3 sons on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off Saul's head and stripped off his armor. Then they proclaimed the good news of Saul's death in their pagan temple and all the people throughout the land of Philistia. They placed his armor in the temple of the Ashtoreth, and they fastened his body to the wall of the city of Bethshan. But when the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul and all their mighty warriors traveled through the night to Bethshan and took the bodies of Saul and his sons down from the wall. They brought them to Jabesh, where they burned the bodies. Then they took their bones and buried them beneath the tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. And that, my beautiful people, is our reading for today. And that finishes up the book of 1 Samuel. That was 1 Samuel 28, 29, 30, and 31. And we'll pick up in 2 Samuel tomorrow. All right, y'all. So let's hop back on over here. Shalom, Belinda Brown. Hey, Auntie Baker. Hey, Alicia Dot. Good morning, Uncle JP. All right, y'all. Back here, page 453. Now, this starts with the section entitled Forerunner of the Messiah. Okay, we're still reading about Elijah. Many-sided. Okay. Many-sided or sided, S-I-D-E-D, many-sided, like many sides. Okay. Many-sided, though Elijah's participation in the course of historical events is, it cannot be compared to what he is expected to do in the days of the Messiah. He is charged with the mission of ordering the coming time aright and restoring the tribes of Jacob. His messianic activity, thus, is to be twofold. He is the forerunner of the Messiah, yet in part, he will himself realize that promised scheme of salvation. His first task will be to induce Israel to repent when the Messiah is about to come, and to establish peace and harmony in the world. Hence, he will have to settle all legal difficulties and solve all legal problems that have accumulated since days immemorial, and decide vexed questions of the ritual concerning which authors entertain contradictory views. In short, all difference of opinion must be removed from the path of the Messiah. This office of expounder of the law, Elijah will continue to occupy even after the reign of peace has been established on the earth. And his relation to Moses will be the same Aaron once held. Elijah's preparatory work will begin 3 days before the advent of the Messiah. Then he will appear in Palestine and will utter a lament over the devastation of the Holy Land, and his wail will be heard throughout the world. The last words of his legacy will be, "Now peace will come upon earth." When the evildoers hear this message, they will rejoice. On the second day, he will appear again and proclaim, "Good will come upon the earth." And on the third, his promise will be heard. Salvation will come upon the earth. Then Michael will blow the trumpet, and once more Elijah will make his appearance, this time to introduce the Messiah. To make sure of the identity of the Messiah, the Jews will demand that he perform the miracle of resurrection before their eyes, reviving such of the dead as they have personally known. I'm sorry. Switching words around, y'all. Let me go back. To make sure of the identity of the Messiah. Number 2. The Jews will demand that he perform the miracle of resurrection before their eyes, reviving such of the dead as they had known personally. Okay. But the Messiah will do the following 7 wonders. He will bring Moses and the generation of the desert to life. Korah and his band will be raised from out of the earth. He will revive the Ephraimic Messiah who was slain. He will show the 3 holy vessels of the temple, the ark, the flask of manna, and the cruse of sacred oil, all 3 of which disappeared mysteriously. He will wave a scepter given him by Yahuwah. He will grind the mountains of the Holy Land into powder like straw, and he will reveal the secret of redemption. Then the Jews will believe that Elijah is the Elijah promised to them, and the Messiah introduced by him is the true Messiah. The Messiah will have Elijah blow the trumpet, and at the first sound, the primal light, which shone before the week of creation, will reappear, and the second sound, the dead will arise, and with the swiftness of wind assembled around the Messiah from all corners of the earth. And at the third sound, the Shekinah will become visible to all. The mountains will be raised, and the fourth sound, I'm gonna read this whole section over again, y'all. This is the first time I'm actually reading this part out loud. I've just listened to it. Okay, once I get done, I'm gonna read it over. The mountains will be raised at the fourth sound, and the temple will stand in complete perfection as Ezekiel described it. Let me finish reading this and I'll go back and I'll read it again. During the reign of peace, Elijah will be one of the 8 princes forming the cabinet of the Messiah. Even the coming of the great judgment day will not end his activity. On that day, the children of the wicked who had to die in infancy on the account of the sins of their fathers will be found among the just, while their fathers will be ranged on the other side. The babes will implore their fathers to come to them, but Yahuwah will not permit it. Then Elijah will go to the little ones and teach them how to plead in behalf of their fathers. They will stand before Yahuwah and say, "Is not the measure of good, the mercy of God, larger than the measure of chastisements? If then we died for the sins of our fathers, should they not now for our sakes be granted the good and be permitted to join us in paradise?" Yahuwah will give assent to their pleadings, and Elijah will have fulfilled the word of the prophet Malachi. He will have brought back the fathers to the children. The last act of Elijah's brilliant career will be the execution of Yahuwah's command to slay Samael, which is who? The angel of death. The last act of Elijah's brilliant career will be the execution of Yahuwah's command to slay Samael and so banish evil forever. Okay, so let's go back and read that again, y'all. All right, I'm going to read this whole little section again. Many cited, though Elijah's participation in the course of historical events is, it cannot be compared with what he is expected to do in the days of the Messiah. Now let's real quick, we know that Yahuwah himself is the Messiah, right? He is the Messiah of the entire world. So when all this happens, there is going to be a great king, right? The great king Messiah, which is not what the church has taught. It's not JC, right? Because when he comes, there's certain things that has to be done. So just like every generation, we talk about this all the time. I just want to refresh your memory real quick, right? Okay. Because after all this, with the Messiah, the great king that rules and reigns, Yahuwah then will descend from heaven, right? But there's going to be a king leader here on the earth getting all this stuff in order before the great king descends, right? And heaven merges with earth, or everything returns back to its original state before all the sin and all that stuff happened, right? It's going to return to its original state, okay? Many cited, though Elijah's participation in the course of historical events is, it cannot be compared with what he is expected to do in the days of the Messiah. He is charged with the mission of ordering the coming time aright and restoring the tribes of Jacob. His messianic activity thus is to be twofold. He is to be the forerunner of the Messiah, yet in part, he will himself realize the promised scheme of salvation. His first task will be to introduce Israel to repent when the Messiah is about to come and to establish peace and harmony in the world. Let me say something. Let me pick this back up. Remember, I mentioned this book the other day. Remember, I was talking about these two books that my grandmother has, Angels on Assignment, and the other one called The Elijah Task. I'm not sure if anybody ever seen that book, The Elijah Task. I actually got it. I bought a copy years later, and I still got it today. But as I'm reading some of this stuff, and this book was actually written by a Jewish person, one of the European converts, an actual Jewish person wrote this book. Now I understand that they had knowledge of some of this stuff that we just now coming into, whereby they began to write some of these books, right? So now all this stuff that I've read over the years is making sense. And it's not like they had this whole revelation from heaven, right? Or Yahuwah gave them this whole revelation, but they was compiling scrolls like the stuff, like this has been compiled from multiple scrolls that the many different nations all had alike. That's where they was pulling this information from, right? I just wanted to say that. Let me go back. Okay. His messianic activity, thus, is to be twofold. He is the forerunner of the Messiah, yet in part he will himself realize the promised scheme of salvation. His first task, the Elijah task, his first task will be to introduce Israel to repent when the Messiah is about to come, to establish peace and harmony in the world. Hence, he will have to settle all legal difficulties and solve all legal problems that have accumulated since days immemorial, and decide vexed questions of ritual concerning which authors entertain contradictory views. In short, all difference of opinion must be removed from the path of the Messiah. This office of expounder of the law, Elijah will continue to occupy even after the reign of peace has been established on the earth, and his relation to Moses will be the same as Aaron once held. So we also know that clearly, because it's going to say this, Moses will also come back, right? That's what it says, right? Okay, all right. Moses and Elijah. This office of expounder of the law, Elijah will continue to occupy even after the reign of peace has been established on earth, and his relation to Moses will be the same Aaron once held. Elijah's preparatory work will have begun 3 days before the event of the Messiah. Then he will appear in Palestine, which I don't really think is like the Palestine that we're seeing on TV today and what they're portraying as Palestine. But remember, the person who wrote this, from his understanding, the area is called Palestine. But I don't think that's all of it, right? We're talking about the true Holy Land. But as he's deciphering this, he's using his understanding, right? So as long as we keep that in mind, we won't get tripped up over words and start going into things that really is neither here nor there, right? So remember, this is the true land. Okay. Then he will appear in Palestine and will utter a lament over the devastation over the Holy Land, and his wail will be heard throughout the world. The last words of his elegy will be, "Now peace will come upon earth." When the evildoers hear this message, they will rejoice. On the second day, he will appear again and proclaim, "Good will come upon the earth." And on the third, his promise will be heard. Salvation will come upon the earth. Then Michael will blow the trumpet, and once more Elijah will make his appearance, this time to introduce the Messiah. To make sure of the identity of the Messiah, the Jews will demand that he perform the miracle of resurrection before their eyes, reviving such of the dead as they had personally known. Meaning, we'll know that this is you if you can revive some of the people that we know, that we personally know that's dead. They've been dead. Now listen, I don't know if y'all been keeping up with the news. I haven't really been sharing a lot of it. But over in Israel, the created state of Israel, and I've shared it a couple times before. I want to say I haven't really shared in, well, I have early, no, it wasn't this year in 2021. It was last year when I shared it. Matter of fact, I shared a couple different, I'm going to see if I can find it. But anyway, over in Israel, the created state, they're saying that the Messiah is on the scene, and they personally know who the Messiah is, but they're running him through some tests. And I'm like, I began to think about this. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, let me go through this little mental path. First of all, he's going to make himself known to the true. And once you get that, when you realize who true Israel is, and that whole thing is a bunch of hogwash right from the very start, right? So whatever it is that they're talking about, whoever this person is not who he say he is, right? I just want to say that. I'm gonna try and find a couple of those articles today, because I know I read it this year, but I shared it last year. It was like an update because some people was talking about it. It was like, oh, could this be? I'm like, no, it's not. Y'all about to be off in La La Land somewhere. That is, I'm telling you, that is not the real person. He's not who he say he is. But apparently the Jewish people over there, they really believe that this is the case, right? They truly believe, truly believe that this is the case. And they're taking him through this, I guess, this rigorous thing just to kind of prove, that he is who he say he is. I'm like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm telling y'all. As sure as I know I was born female and I was born black, he is not who he say he is. Hold on, I'm going to come back to that. Okay, look. To make sure of the identity of the Messiah, the Jews would demand that he perform the miracle of resurrection before their eyes, reviving such of the dead as they have personally known. But the Messiah will do the following 7 wonders. He will bring Moses and the generation of the desert to life. Korah and his band he will raise from out of the earth. He will revive the Ephraimic Messiah who was slain. He will show the 3 holy vessels of the temple, the ark, the flask of manna, and the cruse of sacred oil, all 3 of which disappeared mysteriously. He will wave the scepter given him by Yahuwah, and he will grind the mountains of the Holy Land into powder like straw, and he will reveal the secret of redemption. Then the Jews will believe that Elijah is the Elijah promised to them, and the Messiah introduced by him is the true Messiah. The Messiah will have Elijah blow the trumpet, and at the first sound, the primal light, which shone before the week of creation, will reappear. And the second sound, the dead will arise, and with the swiftness of wind assembled around the Messiah from all corners of the earth. And the third sound, the Shekinah will become visible to all. The mountains will be raised at the fourth sound, and the temple will stand in complete perfection as Ezekiel described it. During the reign of peace, Elijah will be one of the 8 princes forming the cabinet of the Messiah. Even the coming of the great judgment day will not end his activity. On that day, the children of the wicked who had to die in infancy on the account of the sins of their fathers will be found among the just, while their fathers will be ranged on the other side. The babes will implore their fathers to come to them, but Yahuwah will not permit it. Then Elijah will go to the little ones and teach them how to plead in behalf of their fathers. They will stand before Yahuwah and say, "Is not the measure of good, the mercy of God, larger than the mercy of chastisements? If then we died for the sins of our fathers, should they not now for our sakes be granted the good and be permitted to join us in paradise?" Yahuwah will give assent to their pleadings, and Elijah will have fulfilled the word of the prophet Malachi. He will have brought back the fathers to the children. The last act of Elijah's brilliant career will be the execution of Yahuwah's command to slay Samael and so banish evil forever. Okay, where we at? 42 minutes. Right. So that's why I try and now I don't know everything. Aliyah, I'm gonna read his question out loud. And we're gonna read this next section. Is the Most High Yahuwah our Redeemer, or would it be Prince Micaiah or Michael, like the day of old, who would come and lead us out? Because the Messiah things steadily throw me off, even though it means savior or messenger. I think that's what throw off a lot of people, y'all. It's going to be like the same setup like when Moses led the generation out of Israel, right? Granted, you had angelic forces helping them behind the scenes. It's going to be the same thing. That's what I believe. That's what up to this point, that's what I believe. It's going to be the same thing, right? It's going to be a Messiah like Moses, right? Apparently, all of heaven know who this person on the earth is going to be. It's going to be like a Moses during this generation. He'll be able to perform all these miracles, all these things, right? He's going to be able to do, right? But still, Yahuwah is keeping with the terms of what we're using, Yahuwah is the Messiah. Like he constantly said, I am your deliverer, I am your savior, right? So the command comes from him, given to his designated representative on the earth to perform the things on the earth, right? So he gives these commands from his holy throne, right? Remember, it's perfect. There is no sin. There's nothing tainted there, right? So until the earth has been purified, he will remain on his throne and keep heaven untainted from all the taintedness here on earth. That's how I understand it at this point. So the person he designates to be the Messiah here on earth, or the general, the head person that's bringing everything in order so he can make his grand appearance with all of heaven. That's how I'm thinking it is. It's going to be like that, to purify earth so then they can now merge together. And it says like the temple that Ezekiel saw, he said, then that temple will stand erect, right? Heaven and earth will merge. So, yeah, sometimes you just got to you got to keep reminding yourself, okay, that's what I had to do to keep it all in line. Just because I grew up in the church and thinking about JC all the time and he's the Messiah and all this, I'm like, wait. And I just got to keep shifting my thoughts. Okay, Yahuwah is the Messiah who will come, merge heaven and earth, and we will all be one. But until that happens, he will use a representative on the earth who is also called the Messiah, but he directly is in connection with Yahuwah. He gets all his orders from Yahuwah directly, right? And that is going to be the lead person or Messiah here on earth. Just like Moses was. Moses was literally like God on earth. But he himself was not God, but Yahuwah infused him with all his authority and his power. Like he completely had all authority to do what he needed to do while he was here, right? Just like the ranks in the military. You got the captain, or like in the Navy. I'll just use Navy because I'm prior Navy, right? You got the captain and you got the officers under him. A lot of times we don't see the captain. We may hear the captain over the 1MC. We rarely ever see the captain because the captain is in his office doing whatever it is, all the war strategies and all these things to give out orders to everybody under him. You do this. You normally got like the second in command coming out. We see the second in command all the time. We rarely ever see we do see the captain, but we rarely ever see him. We see the second in command under him more than we see the captain. Like if we see the captain come out, everybody know, okay, either this is good or this is gonna be bad. Because why is he showing his face, right? It's like the same principles. At least that's how I understand it because of my experience in life, right? So when I look at this, that's how I look at it through my experiences in life. Your experience may be different. You could be in the medical field and be looking at all this in the same way, same principles, but because your experience in life, you're looking at everything through the medical field. Although it's different terminology, the principles, everything, the truth is still the same, right? And that should be that way for everybody all over the world. So there is going to be the captain who we rarely ever see. He will make his appearance when he needs to. But you got the Messiah, the second in command under him, who we see all the time, walking, hey, how you doing? Lesson, we need to boom, 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 giving out the orders from the captain, from the king, from the commander, the head person in charge, right? And then you got the other ranks that are kind of, you got the captains over the hundreds and the thousands and the 50s and the tens, right? And then you got the rest of the crew, everybody else. It's set up just like that. So when you see Messiah, it is a human person here on earth who will be born in that generation. That Messiah will hear that generation, right? With all the heavenly hosts helping. Some will be seen, some will be unseen. At least as of today, that is my understanding. I hope that makes sense. Aliyah, because Yahuwah is the Messiah, right? But he's giving orders down here to the second in command to get all this stuff in order, because when he comes, it's like everything need to be in proper order. Everybody need to understand the protocol of the king, and this is how we're to act. All this, boom, boom, or you might die right then on the spot. Y'all get it? I hope that makes sense. Okay. Well, at least in my mind, it makes sense, but y'all tell me. I hope I explained that somewhat in the way we understand. Okay. All right. So where we at? Oh, we had an hour. We should just pause right here, because it's actually going into chapter 8. So we'll just pause right here. We read that one section. Oh, yeah, that's good. So this next section we'll start tomorrow. It's chapter 8. It's starting with Elisha and Jonah. All right, y'all. So, yeah, we'll end it right here today. Okay. Yeah, we'll end it right here. Let me write my page number down. All right, y'all. So we read 1 Samuel, the rest of the book of 1 Samuel, 28, 29, 30, and 31. And then we read this little section about the forerunner of the Messiah and the legends of the Jews on page 453 to 454. It is Tuesday, March the 30th, 2021, day 115 of year 3 of reading through the books of the law and the prophets, and of the 3-year consecutive day count, day 784. It is the 3rd day of the feast of unleavened bread. All right, y'all. Ooh, I did something. Hold up. Ooh, click myself offline. Did I? No. I did something with YouTube. I'm sorry, y'all. What did I do? I hit a button on my mouse. I think it's still on, but it says offline. Y'all, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to check it. Because even the whole chat went away. I'm sorry, y'all. Like the whole time. Is it? I don't know what I just did. I hit my mouse and I think this button on the side ended it. I'm sorry, y'all. Oh, I might have to upload it. Okay. I'm sorry. Let me just go ahead and do the blessing so we can go and get out of here for today, y'all. Okay, so the blessing is found in Deuteronomy. I'm sorry. Wrong one. In Numbers chapter 6, verses 22 through 27. And remember, the first 21 verses is the Nazarite vow. And Yahuwah spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron and unto his sons, saying, On this wise ye shall bless the children of Israel, saying unto them, May Yahuwah bless us and keep us. May Yahuwah make his face to shine upon us and be gracious unto us. May Yahuwah lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. And they shall put my name upon the children of Israel, and I will bless them. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to, I don't know, I might just have to upload the video from Facebook to YouTube. That sucks. This whole button. I think this is a button right here. And I clicked it. But anyway, y'all, we'll go ahead and get out of here. I'll see y'all tomorrow, bright and early. I think I answered all the questions for here real quick. Yeah, and the questions, there was a couple things that popped in, but when I hit it, it cut it off, and all of them just kind of went away. So, yikes. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, so I'll see y'all back here bright and early in the morning, 7:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Bruce.